Hey everybody, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFoot U. Today I have former DC United goalie Andrew Dykstra with his daughter, and hopefully we get you back in there. There, we still got a signal. And then from across the pond we have Brice, a footballer from England who is kind of well, he's a lot of things. He's a soccer fan. He likes to compete with soccer, and then he also has some thoughts about the soccer culture. I guess first off, let me ask you this, Andrew, because you coach. How big is soccer, at least in the U.S., and what are your projections with the world connection with soccer?
Yeah. It's obviously a big pass for me. I'm still involved on the youth level. I mean, it's huge. Soccer's been one of those things in this country that everybody's done as a youth. And then they kind of graduate to go on to play, many other sports we have. We're still kind of behind financially speaking in popularity. NFL, NHL, baseball, all the basketball, the big sports. So there still needs to be an investment in terms of the money, which would then bring more professionalism, people like myself back into the fold to make it better. But everybody knows it, everybody likes it. It's probably more of a local and family style event as opposed to like England, Germany, where uh, you get the ruffians out there and knocking heads before and after the game. So I'd say that the passions there are just not on the same level, and it definitely has room to grow. I think in the MLS, which is our top level, um, in terms of the talent, it's really good. I think we're still trying to piece some things together for the long run. I know when I was playing, they kept saying by 2022 we want to be a world competing, um, and that's great, it's good ambition. However, I think we're still behind the times a little bit.
So, Brice, why do you think that soccer is more accepted internationally as sort of the sport of the world?
Yes, the world's game, or the beautiful game as we call it. I think it is more adopted than any other game because of its simplicity. You know, it's just you get the ball, you kick it. You can play on your own. You can play with two people, three. That's so easy to play it. First of all, so for me, it starts at a very young age, so you can engage with that sport. And I also believe that when you grow up, and especially within Europe, is everything is just turned around it. You know, in France on the Wednesday afternoon, you've got soccer clubs. So you're meeting your friends at the soccer clubs. It's more social than just, let's play the game and it ends there. There's something happening before, after. That's how you make friendships. That's how you meet people. That's how you go in the evenings then later on and just enjoy watching the games with your family and your friends. It becomes a big part of your life.
Hmm. We have something here in the U.S., and I'm for watching. I prefer watching, although I love to play soccer. I played this morning. For watching, I prefer American football. I'm a huge Bills fan. They're actually making a documentary about the Bills never winning a Super Bowl. It's win just once or once before I die, I think. Andre Reed, who was the Bills wide receiver, is picking up that project, and they're going to try to pick up Netflix or some streaming network to do it. But yet, within my little soccer pickup game, which is international, I mean, we have Brazil, we have Germany, Italy, Washington, D.C. is a melting pot. So we get all these people. There is a huge interest in Man City and all the games internationally. So they will be hitting it up on WhatsApp, where we all get connected with, if there's going to be some change in the game, but then they end up, after hours. Although not too many of us watch it together, like you would in some pub in England, which is interesting. I want to get to another aspect with just where we are with you mentioned, Andrew, development of skills. I mean, you're involved in a high level of coaching. Why is it that with all these young U.S. athletes coming up that we field some very competitive U.S. teams, but it still seems like there's something lacking that is not there within the U.S. system versus internationally?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer. I think it always really comes down to money and resources. You know, like if you think in European countries, everything is. I mean, I try to tell my friends here. I said, imagine if you took everything available in terms of resources and money, coaching and everything else from NBA and NFL and NHL and put it into one sport. Um, we'd rival, I would imagine, European countries, but it just doesn't exist. We also kind of have a different kind of landscape in the youth side. So over there, they're fully invested. Those kids, by the time they hit 16, you're either on your route to play professionally within the organization or you're out. Um, and a lot of those guys that are out tend to come over here, kind of play like USL, that type of stuff. Um, so over here, we have, you know, anybody can become a coach. You just go get a licensure and you coach, and then it turns into this. You've heard like Ibrahimovic complain when he was at LA about how much he had to spend for his kids to play youth soccer, and it unfortunately it's the way it is because we just don't have the investment from companies and anything like that. Um, but um, you know, it's just what we have to do to keep the sport going, in a sense. Um, because you need money to invest and everything else. And unfortunately, it comes from our parents. It doesn't come from big organizations who are sponsoring.
To your point, I've had more than one patient. One that I remember in particular that was, I think he played. He definitely was. He was either midfielder or offensive line player, front line player for DC United, and he was sending his son to Europe for the summer for a camp, just because of I guess maybe not only the level of play, but just being able to see different styles. I know that on the field, me learning soccer, really learning it on the field, postgraduate, because when I went out for soccer, I was cut at McLean High School. We had diplomats whose kids played, as youths, and then you had guys like me that had just good endurance that didn't know where to place myself on the field, even, to make a run. And so then it's just you just pick up little subsets of things, little iterations from different styles. How Brazilians have their style, Ethiopians are up in your grill, Nigerians as well. So I think that that's one thing that maybe that exposure does yield. Let me get to something about level of ferocity and injuries for a moment, Andrew. I'm sorry, Brice. You mentioned you had a soccer injury. That was just a wear and tear injury or was that some rough play?
Okay, so that's a bit of a long story that I'm going to try and make it as short as possible. So basically, it was 10 years ago now. I broke my patellar tendon. So that was very randomly. You know, there's someone that touched the back of my foot, and I just landed wrongly on my foot, which broke my patellar tendon. So it was not a very rough challenge. I just think it was just clumsy. That's all it was. And so following that, for a year, obviously, I had to rebuild my muscle, going into rehab, seeing physios, and I was able to get back on the pitch. However, when I was back on the pitch, I created muscle imbalances, and my calf, I think it was just a calf strain, according to physios. Um, my calf was just popping every single time. So I started to sprint, I could feel it. And every 3 weeks after resting it, after strengthening it, as all physios were saying, um, I was trying to get back on the pitch, and it would happen again and again and again. So I was seeing different physios, public, private, you name them. I've seen probably 5 or 10 of them, and they all told me the same thing. You need to strengthen your legs, your calf, your muscles around your knee. And I kept doing that. I kept doing this, but the injury kept coming back until I've got one of my friend who is a podiatrist just shared with me some insoles.
In England, was it? Was it in England or elsewhere?
So I was living in England. He lives in France, and
Okay.
without um, an important consultation, it was just over the phone. He said, "I will send them to you." I put them on. The pain was gone. I was able
He
to
had
get
a
back into
specially
football.
designed arch support for cleats. Is that what you're saying? What?
Yes, there were. So that's the kind of question they asked me is what type of shoes are you wearing? When does it happen?
Mhm.
Um, what other questions did he ask me? Just a few different questions like this, and he was able to
Did
build
he
it for
take a
me
look at you stand even on a picture, or he was just verbally and able to kind of try to take a stab at it?
just verbally. He mentioned that he
Interesting.
gave me he
Hmm.
just gave me the ones that had the best correction within them,
Uh-huh.
and that worked.
With your
Yes,
description. Hmm.
yeah,
That's awesome.
and yeah, that
Hmm.
worked. And
Yeah.
I was really surprised that a podiatrist was able to solve a problem, a year-long problem that a lot of
Yeah, that's
physios
awesome.
were not able to.
Andrew, I got to ask you, you played high level soccer, so not to overstate the foot to the ground as the pedestal, but what have you seen that's worked and hasn't worked with that concept?
Yeah, I that story is great. I think it resonates with a lot of things I've seen. I work right now as an occupational fitness specialist as a contractor for the government. Um, when I'm training in the gym by myself in front of others, I train barefoot for this very reason. Strengthen the muscles in the foot, get stability in the ankles, so the knee doesn't have to rely on stability. Because it's like think of it like a chain from the ground up. Um, there's another thing that a lot of people they do. It's very popular over here to do CrossFit. So if you think about planes of movement, everything is in the sagittal plane, straight forward,
Yeah.
up and down. I tell them like you got to move. If you're going to play recreationally or even try to play competitively. I said you have to move in other planes of movement. You have to learn to rotate, plant, move laterally. Your ankle and your foot has to brace to do all those things, and if it's not stable, your knee takes the brunt. The knee takes the brunt. That's where you see injuries and everything else. And I'm not a
I want to just
physiotherapist.
piggyback for a moment on what you're saying. There's so much rotary, right, with soccer, with external, internal rotation. I'll get in the car, and if I have a long drive to, more than 30 minutes the next day, or sometimes even 10, 12 minutes, I typically you're going on to the next thing, you got to mow the lawn, whatever. And, my ITB or my rectus femoris will be telling me it's there. So invariably, I'll end up, and one of the best stretches I saw for at least rectus femoris, which I wasn't sure if it was just a hip thing, but it is, it's right center line and right here, because you're putting a tremendous amount of external force and also forward hunching, all those things. So you do this sort of trunkle back and forth. You keep your pelvis aligned, and just with one leg back, it's actually a running stretch that you can do too. But that you'll feel that ping of tension that is telling you that it's been overworked. And possibly and probably there's been some things that I haven't been doing in the gym because I've started adding legs to my regimen. But interesting enough, that side of where I'm dominant and kicking more is also the dominant side because I have an ACL deficiency on the left that I never had completely reconstructed. So I'm already a little more tentative, and I got that kind of lazy left kick. So if it comes at my left, I'll kick my best left that I can, but it's a sloppy left. It's not an engaged, uh, precise and hard left on the kick. So, I started doing the hamstrings, the squats, all the lunges and things that help somewhat. But it just ends up being a cueing thing because there's a lot of muscle inhibition that occurs after a knee injury. What about, and I'll ask both of you this because let's start with you, Andrew. Cleat design seems like it's been laggard with most Adidas, Puma, whatever the manufacturer, Nike. So I heard of one thing where they're putting an air pillow to decelerate, like for like the turf toe kind of thing. Is something that's being done, which I heard from a pet orthopedist meeting that I recently sat in on, and I'm not always up on what's coming down the pike, but why do you feel in general? I mean, I know, and I just wrote an article on cleats where you can dissect down to preferences for surfaces to perform, but it doesn't seem like, at least for certain preventative things, that the shank of the cleat itself, uh, it seems in many cases it could be improved upon for certain deficits and injuries.
Yeah, in my opinion, every company had this thing of trying to make their boot lighter and lighter and lighter. But I think there is a big space for trying to find design to improve for injury prevention. Because I haven't seen or heard of anything that's been other than orthotics that's been prescribed to athletes in terms of the build of their shoe. But I don't know. In my opinion, before knowing anything, I would everybody's completely different. So I would imagine it's probably very difficult to design something that's going to be beneficial to everybody.
And then if you go custom, it gets very expensive for the pros, which
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know how often that's done, by the way. And I'm kind of surprised because I know that there's, specialty cleats and things. What are you riding when you play, Brice? What do you ride? What do you?
Well, funnily enough, I am not a big fan of the new types of shoes, or clots, as you call it, because, like you and Andrew are saying, they're trying to make them lighter, and for me, sometimes you just feel they haven't got anything on, and it feels odd. So I am more a fan of the old school shoes, like the Coupa Mundial, and I know a lot of my friends are also playing with these kind of old style shoes that um, have a wide base, because the lighter shoes, they also are very what's the word, the opposite of wide.
Narrow.
They get too narrow. Yeah, they get
Yeah.
too narrow, and when you run, sometimes it can make you feel uncomfortable. So I go old school all day, every day.
Yeah, I love the Copa Mundial, and I wore that today, and then sometimes I'll wear the turf, which doesn't have quite as much stability or performance, but it's not as grabby. And so if I don't want to make as hard cuts because my knee is maybe swollen from the day before, I might use this shoe if I'm playing like a little less, trying to be on top of the ball and right there at the not that you can't take an aggressive first step. What about aggression in soccer, Andrew? You had some head injuries. I don't know if it was just part of the game or if somebody being aggressive, but then you had something unusual that happened. But what's your general thoughts on both pro and then pickup and just league games
In terms
in
of
terms
the
of physicality
physicality.
and playing smart and playing hard, but not to hurt?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that I probably had a couple of undiagnosed back in the day before it was a real big concern, especially as the NFL kind of found a lot of discoveries, I guess. I'd say it's interesting. Youth is not terrible. Just kind of depends on the person, or it depends on, maybe the way you were coached. Um, the college game, yes, it's much faster. It can be more physical. When you get to the pros, we're talking about guys and their livelihood. Especially when I when I went over to do some tryouts in England, Scotland, it was a different level. Over here,
I was a goalkeeper, so I go up for a ball, kind of call me catch one. If you yell goalkeeper around here, everybody kind of backs off, right? You do it down there, and everybody's trying to headbutt you or throw an elbow or anything else. So from day one, I was kind of like, okay, if that's the way it's got to be, then that.
Yeah,
But people are playing for their careers and their livelihood.
and that's different. Yeah. Well, let me ask, can I interject this?
Yeah.
In your experience, both as you got up to pro soccer and before, what about the play where, and you play goalie, so it's a little different, but let's say you're playing defender and someone doesn't have a clean shot at goal, and so there's very little chance that they're going to strike anything but their foot or you or something, and then you get hit square in the face. Have you seen somebody kind of like the pitcher go or the batter go back at the pitcher after that, or do they just accept that, well, he pushed it, he didn't really have the shot but he took it anyway to either deflect it out of bounds or just to try it because he wanted to try to score irrespective? Didn't come up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like football is very cultural. Like, and over here, we have a big influence from South America and Central America. So I don't know, in terms of the aggression and doing all those types of things, hoping I'm understanding the question correctly, but
well, let me, I had this play happen to me and I didn't come at the guy, but I got like ringing after it. And it was clear that I was in front of him. The ball struck me, side temple, and then I heard the ear ring and it went black for a second, and I didn't fall to the ground, but I took myself out of the game after that. It's the third time with this guy that it's happened in the last, and it only happens with a couple players. They're going to take that big swing, irrespective of where you are defending them. They're going to just do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is only my personal opinion. I mean, no offense by it, but there's a lot of African countries. They tend to be probably a little more reckless at times. Just the cultural thing. I feel like South Americans, Central Americans are a little more strategic about how they do that type of stuff, or they take.
Yeah.
I feel like in Europe, it's like.
Yeah. Well, let's jump over to Europe. What have you seen with regards to that, Bryce? And I know you got to kick off soon. What have you experienced in your playing soccer and from stories?
Yeah, so from my side, I think it's usually down to individuals. Well, first of all, I grew up in France, and in France there was not that many aggression. It was more very technical and very physical in terms of speed.
Except for that Zidane at the end of his career.
Well, yes, that's what I meant by it's down to the individual. I think it was just Zidane that sometimes could lose it. Yeah, it's just a moment of madness that can happen every now and again. But on the pitch itself, it was more, how is your first touch? The first touch is going to make the difference. There was not that type of very aggressive people compared to England, where in here it's really aggressive. It's very physical. They play with their hands, their elbows, even before the balls come to you. So it's quite interesting to see the difference in styles of playing.
Well, and you watch a lot of soccer. How often do you see the storyline where somebody got dirtied up in the previous game, and then they come to the match and they're waiting for the play to just make a very powerful move that might be legal, but definitely let that player know that they remember the last play that happened to them. Does that happen or not so much? Or it's just the next game?
It used to happen a lot. Like, at the beginning of every game, it was always someone that was saying, I'm going to show them I'm here and this is my pitch. And so beginning of every game, they would go for it, like a very aggressive and nasty type of challenge. So yeah, that still happens, even though I see less and less, but it still happens quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to wrap it up, guys. Last question: the youth and future of soccer. Andrew, we'll start with you. What's going to be the thing that we haven't thought about yet that's going to happen to soccer?
Woo. Great question. I'm just thinking in terms of the U.S. I think we still have ways to go. I think that we do now have the youth talent that I think Klinsmann was on to, where he said we need to get these guys overseas playing in bigger clubs and bring them back to play. That's still a thing. I think there's still an urge for people to, you'll see the commentators and Alexi Lalas and these guys like, oh, we get in the MLS to make this better. It's like, well, Europe's got it figured out. Get those kids over there, get them some work, bring them back. Then it's just a matter of letting it progress. And then we get to the point where we have talented coaches and we start to piece it all together. Because I think we've shown glimpses of it. We got to make it more consistent. And soccer in this country is still young. It's still 80, 90 years behind Europe. So we have ways to go. I think we're almost there.
Well, certainly, I think also one trend that I want to say where you can really learn rudiments of the game is, you and I did a podcast, a brief one, where you just showed how you can use the space of your kitchen to practice your soccer skills. So with that transaction of being connected and being able to pick up skill videos and information, that's another great way to improve your game and just find out more about the game. You looks like you got your hands full, so I'm gonna let you get on with your day, and we'll finish with Brett. Thank you, Andrew. I'll send it to you.
It's nice to meet you, Brice. You guys take care.
Yep.
All right.
Nice to meet you too, Andrew.
All right. Ciao.
Brice, bye. We'll wrap it up with you. What do you see internationally that I'm not seeing over here in the U.S. about the growth and the next thing that's going to be with soccer?
That's a very good question. I quite like to hear, Andrew's fact that they are 80 or 90 years behind what's going on in Europe, because I feel in Europe, they all think, the youngsters, they all think that they're going to become superstars. They're all going to be the next Mbappe. So I feel like there is less love within the game itself. It's not a game. It starts to become more pressured, more, it's going to become their parents' pensions, basically. And yeah, and that worries me quite a bit. They start to lose the love of the game and it become more and more about money. That's my fear.
Well, I think you struck a good point in that attitude of being the Mbappe or the Mbappe, the Messi on the field also translates to not necessarily league play, but when you see individuals on a pickup field, you will see that amongst certain personalities, and it's frustrating, and there's also a lot of trash talking both on and off the field, and continuing. Soccer guys love to chop it up, but no, interesting that you identified that, and I will tell you this, at least within the soccer fraternity that I have, even though there's a lot of that, there's also sort of a commonality of passion for the game, and we're not getting paid. We're just playing because we love the game, and then we love being able to laugh about certain things after the game and be there to support each other. So, hopefully you're continuing to do that over where you are, and one last little bit that I did want to mention is, although I do love the idea of sort of the culture, what I call the cult of CrossFit. I think you can take any sort of general trend to an extreme at the exclusion of other things. So I think it's good to be balanced in terms of your approach. And there's just, for me, people that I have seen in my office that didn't have the proper support, and they're gonna, whether it be soccer or trying to run an ultra marathon, they can't run it in a pair of shoes that has an insole like cardboard. It's just not going to happen. And they may have these quote unquote gurus out there, but they don't know jack, sugar, honey, ice, and tea about really biomechanics. Biomechanics comes from both the visual, and then it's also the implied forces, which ends up being more important than what you see visually, the torque within those. So there's the kinematics, and then there's the actual torques that are going through the joint. So that is one thing that, although I do embrace the idea of cross training, and then in some cases, if you have somebody with a fit body like Andrew, who's managed to probably be not too far from his game playing weight, then I think that's great. But if you're deconditioned and so forth, that cannot be a recipe for disaster. I'll let you have final word from your side. And thanks for doing this.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It was a good pleasure. And final word is, yeah, you're completely right. You need to keep your body cross-trained. You need to making sure that you do everything in your power to be fit on the pitch and outside the pitch. And let's just carry on playing this game. It's the world's game for a reason. And everywhere I travel, that's the first thing that I want to check. I want to check how people are playing, where can we play, and so we need to still love this game.
Yeah, well,
there's
a reason that Ted Lasso made it big here in the States. So there's certainly a love for the game and a love for the culture. So we'll press on, and maybe up the road we'll have a relook at this in a year and see where soccer is.
So, sounds good to me. Maybe we're gonna do a round two next year to see the progress.
All right. Be well. Talk to you, Brice.
And you, thank you very much, Ben. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.